Chapter 23 of Book 1 of Posterior Analytics by Aristotle. Chapter 23 Certain Corollaries. From what has been shown, it appears plain that if one and the same thing is inherent in two, for instance A in C and in D, when one is not predicated of the other, either not at all or not universally, then it is not always inherent according to something common. Thus to the isosceles and to the scalene triangle, the possession of angles equal to 2 right is inherent according to something common, for it is inherent so far as each is a certain figure, and not so far as it is something else. This however is not always the case, for let B be that according to which A is inherent in C, D. Then it is evident that B is also inherent in C and in D according to something else common, and that also according to something else, so that between two terms, infinite terms may be inserted, but this is impossible. It is not then necessary that the same thing should always be inherent in many according to something common, since indeed there will be immediate propositions. It is moreover requisite that the terms should be in the same genus, and from the same individuals, since that which is common will be of those which are essentially inherent, for it is impossible to transfer things which are demonstrated from one genus to another. But it is also manifest that when A is with B, if there is a certain middle, we may show that B is with A, and the elements of this are these, and whatever are media, for immediate propositions, either all of them, or those which are universal, are elements. Yet if there is not a medium, there is no longer demonstration, but this is the way to principles. In like manner, if A is not with B, if there is either a middle, or something prior to which it is not present, there is a demonstration, but if not, there is no demonstration, but a principle, and there are as many elements as terms, for the propositions of these are the principles of demonstration. As also there are certain indemonstrable principles, that this is that, and that this is present with that, so there are also that this is not that, and that this is not present with that, so that there will be some principles that a thing is, but others that it is not. Still, when it is required to demonstrate, that which is first predicated of B must be assumed. Let this be C, and let A in like manner be predicated of this. By always proceeding thus, there is never a proposition externally, nor is that which is present with A assumed in the demonstration, but the middle is always condensed till they become indivisible and one. They are one indeed when the immediate is produced, and one proposition simply, an immediate one, and as in other things the principle is simple, but this is not the same everywhere, but in weight it is a minor, in melody a demi-semi-quaver, and something else in another thing. Thus in syllogism, the one is an immediate proposition, but in demonstration and science it is intuition. In syllogisms then, which demonstrate the being inherent, nothing falls beyond the middle, but in negatives here, nothing falls external of that which ought to be inherent, as if A is not present with B through C, for if C is present with every B, but A with no C, and if again it should be requisite to show that A is with no C, we must assume the medium of A and C, and thus we must always proceed. If however it should be required to show that D is not with E, because C is with every D, but with no or not with every E, the medium will never fall external to E, and this is with what it need not be present. As to the third mode, it will never proceed external to that from which, nor which it is necessary to deny. Chapter 24. The superiority of universal to particular demonstration proved. As one demonstration is universal, but another particular, one also affirmative, but the other negative, it is questioned which is preferable. Likewise also about what is called direct demonstration, and that which leads to the impossible. Let us first then consider the universal and the particular, and having explained this, speak of what is called direct demonstration, and that to the impossible. Perhaps then, to some considering the matter in this way, the particular may appear the better, for if that demonstration is preferable, by which we obtain better knowledge, for this is the excellence of demonstration. But we know each thing better when we know it per se, than when through something else. As we know Coriscus is a musician, when we know that Coriscus is a musician, rather than when we know that a man is a musician, and likewise in other things. But the universal demonstrates because a thing is something else, not because it is that which it is, as that an isosceles triangle has two right angles, not because it is isosceles, but because it is a triangle. But the particular demonstrates because a thing is what it is. If then the demonstration per se is preferable, and the particular is such rather than the universal, particular demonstration would be the better. Besides, if the universal is nothing else than particulars, but demonstration produces opinion that this thing is something according to which it demonstrates, and that a certain nature of this kind is in things which subsist, as of triangle, besides particular, triangles, and of figure, besides particular figures, and of number, besides particular numbers. But the demonstration about being is better than that about non-being, and that through which there is no deception, than that through which there is. But universal demonstration is of this sort, since men proceeding demonstrate as about the analogous, as that a thing which is of such a kind as to be neither line, nor number, nor solid, nor superficies, but something besides these, is analogous. If then this is more universal, but is less conversant with being than particular, and produces false opinion, universal will be inferior to particular demonstration. First then, may we not remark that one of these arguments does not apply more to universal than to particular demonstration? For if the possession of angles equal to two right angles is inherent, not in respect of isosceles, but of triangle, whoever knows that it is isosceles knows less essentially than he who knows that it is triangle. In short, if not so far as it is triangle, he then shows it, there will not be demonstration, but if it is, whoever knows a thing so far as it is what it is, knows that thing more. If then triangle is of wider extension than isosceles, and there is the same definition, and triangle is not equivocal, and the possession of two angles equal to two right angles is inherent in every triangle, triangle will have such angles, not so far as it is isosceles, but the isosceles will have them so far as it is triangle. Hence he who knows the universal knows more in regard to the being inherent than he who knows particularly. Hence too the universal is better than the particular demonstration. Moreover, if there is one certain definition, and no equivocation, the universal will not subsist less, but rather more, than certain particulars, inasmuch as in the former there are things incorruptible, but particulars are more corruptible. Besides, there is no necessity that we should apprehend this universal to be something besides these particulars, because it shows one thing no more than in others which do not signify substance, but quality, or relation, or action. But if a person thinks thus, it is the hearer, and not demonstration, which is to blame. Again, if demonstration is a syllogism showing the cause and the why, the universal indeed is rather causal, for that with which anything is essentially present is itself a cause to itself, but the universal is the first, therefore the universal is cause. Wherefore the universal demonstration is better, since it rather partakes of the cause and the why. Besides, up to this we investigate the why, and we think that then we know it, when this is becoming, or is, not because something else is, for thus there is the end, and the last boundary. For example, on what account did he come? That he might receive money, but this, that he might pay his debts, this, that he might not act unjustly, and thus proceeding, when it is no longer on account of something else, nor for the sake of another thing, then we say that he came, and that it is, and that it becomes on account of this as the end, and that then we especially know why he came. If then the same occurs as to all causes and inquiries into the why, but as to things which are so causes as that for the sake of which we thus especially know, in other things also we then chiefly know when this no longer subsists, because another thing does. When therefore we know that the external angles are equal to four right angles, because it is isosceles, the inquiry yet remains. Why? Because isosceles, because it is a triangle, and this because it is a rectilinear figure. But if it is this no longer on account of something else, then we preeminently know, then also universally, wherefore the universal is better. Again, by how much more things are according to the particular, do they fall into infinites, but the universal tends to the simple and the finite. So far indeed as they are infinite, they are not subjects of science, but so far as they are finite, they may be known. Wherefore, so far as they are universal, are they more objects of scientific knowledge, than so far as they are particular. Universals, however, are more demonstrable, and of things more demonstrable is their preeminent demonstration, for relatives are at one and the same time more, whence the universal is better, since it is demonstration preeminently. Besides, that demonstration is preferable, according to which this and something else are known, to that by which this alone is known. Now, he who has the universal knows also the particular, but the latter does not know the universal, wherefore even thus the universal will be more eligible. Again, as follows, it is possible rather to demonstrate the universal, because a person demonstrates through a medium, which is nearer to the principle. But what is immediate is the nearest, and this is the principle. If then that demonstration which is from the principle is more accurate than that which is not from the principle, the demonstration which is in a greater degree from the principle, is more accurate than that which is from it in a less degree. Now, the more universal is of this kind, wherefore the universal will be the better, as if it were required to demonstrate A of D, and the media should be B, C, but B the higher, wherefore the demonstration through this is more universal. Some of the above arguments are logical. It is chiefly clear, however, that the universal is more excellent, because when of two propositions we have that which is the prior, we also in a certain degree know and possess in capacity that which is posterior. Thus if a man knows that every triangle has angles equal to 2 right, he also in a certain respect knows in capacity that an isosceles triangle has angles equal to 2 right, even if he does not know that the isosceles is a triangle. But he who has this proposition by no means knows the universal, neither in capacity nor in energy. The universal proposition also is intuitively intelligible, but the particular ends in sense. Chapter 25. The superiority of affirmative to negative demonstration proved. That universal is better than particular demonstration, let so much be alleged, but that the affirmative is preferable to the negative will be evident from this. Let that demonstration be better, ceteris paribus, which consists of fewer postulates, or hypotheses, or propositions. For if they are similarly known, quicker knowledge will be obtained through these, which is more eligible. The reason, however, of this proposition, that that which consists of fewer is better, universally is this. For if the media are similarly known, but things prior are more known, let the demonstration be through the media of B, C, D, that A is present with E, but through F, G, that A is present with E, that A is present with D, and that A is present with E subsists similarly, but that A is with D is prior and more known than that A is with E, for that is demonstrated through this, and that is more credible through which a thing is demonstrated. Also the demonstration which is through fewer things is therefore better, ceteris paribus. Both then are demonstrated through 3 terms, and 2 propositions, but the one assumes that something is, and the other that something is and is not. Hence through a greater number of things the demonstration is made, so that it is the worse. Moreover, since it has been shown impossible for a syllogism to be produced with both propositions negative, but that one must of necessity be such negative, and the other that a thing is present with, that is affirmative, we must in addition to this assume this, for it is necessary that affirmative propositions, when the demonstration is increased, should become more, but it is impossible that the negatives should be more than one in every syllogism. For let A be present with nothing of those with which B is, but B be present with every C. If indeed, again, it should be necessary to increase both propositions, a middle must be introduced. Of A, B, then, let the middle be D, but of B, C, let the middle be E. E, then is evidently affirmative, but D is affirmative indeed of B, yet is placed negatively as regards A, since it is necessary that D should be present with every B, but A with no D. There is then one negative proposition, viz. A, D. The same mode also subsists in other syllogisms, for the middle of affirmative terms is always affirmative in respect of both extremes, but in the case of a negative syllogism, the middle must be necessarily negative in respect to one of the two, so there is one proposition of this kind, but the others are affirmative. If then that is more known and credible through which a thing is demonstrated, but the negative is shown through the affirmative, and the latter not through the former, this, since it is prior, more known, and more credible, will be better. Again, since the principle of syllogism is an universal immediate proposition, but the universal proposition in an ostensive demonstration is affirmative, but in a negative is negative, and since the affirmative is prior to, and more known than, the negative, for negation is known through affirmation, and affirmation is prior, just as being is prior to not being, therefore the principle of affirmative is better than that of negative demonstration, but that which uses better principles is better. Moreover, it partakes more of the nature of principle, since without affirmative there is no negative demonstration. Chapter 26. The superiority of the same to demonstration, ad impossible, proved. Since affirmative is better than negative demonstration, it is evidently also better than that which leads to the impossible. It is necessary, however, to know what the difference between them is. Let A then be present with no B, but let B be with every C. Wherefore it is necessary that A should be with no C. The terms then, being thus assumed, the negative proposition proving that A is not present with C will be ostensive. The demonstration, however, to the impossible is as follows. If it is required to show that A is not present with B, it must be assumed present, also that B is with C, so that it will happen that A is with C. Let this, however, be known, and acknowledged impossible, then it is impossible that A should be with B. If then B is acknowledged present with C, it is impossible that A should be with B. The terms then indeed are similarly arranged, but it makes a difference which negative proposition is more known, viz. Whether that A is not present with B, or that A is not present with C. When then the conclusion is more known that it is not, there is a demonstration to the impossible produced, but when that which is in the syllogism is more known, the demonstration is ostensive. Naturally, however, that A is not present with B is prior to A is not present with C, for those things are prior to the conclusion, from which the conclusion is collected, and that A is not with C is the conclusion, but that A is not with B is that from which the conclusion is derived. For neither if a certain thing happens to be subverted, is this the conclusion, but those the premises from which the conclusion is derived. That indeed from which it is inferred is a syllogism, which may so subsist as either a whole to a part, or as a part to a whole, but the propositions A, C, and A, B do not thus subsist with regard to each other. If then that demonstration which is from things more known and prior be superior, but both are credible from something not existing, yet the one from the prior, the other from what is posterior, negative demonstration will in short be better than that to the impossible, so that as affirmative demonstration is better than this, it is also evidently better than that leading to the impossible. End of chapter 26 of book 1. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards. Chapter 27 of book 1 of Posterior Analytics by Aristotle. Chapter 27. Upon the nature of more accurate science. One science is more accurate than and prior to another, both the science that a thing is, and the same why it is, but not separately that it is, than the science of why it is. Also that which is not of a subject, than that which is of a subject, for instance, arithmetic, than harmonic science, and that which consists of fewer things, than that which is from addition, as arithmetic than geometry. I mean by from addition, as unity is a substance without position, but a point is substance with position. This is from addition. Chapter 28. What constitutes one, and what different sciences. One science is that which is of one genus of those things which are composed of first principles, and are the parts or affections of these per se. But a science is different from another, whose principles are neither from the same things, nor one from the other. A token of this is when any one arrives at things indemonstrable, for it is necessary that they should be in the same genus with those that are demonstrated. It is also a sign of this when things demonstrated through them are in the same genus, and are cognate. Chapter 29. That there may be several demonstrations of the same thing. There may possibly be many demonstrations of the same thing, not only when one assumes an uncontinued medium from the same class, as if C, D, and F were assumed of A, B, but also from another series. Thus let A be to be changed, D to be moved, B to be delighted, and again G to be tranquilized. It is true then to predicate D of B and A of D. For whoever is delighted is moved, and what is moved is changed. Again, it is true to predicate A of G, and G of B. For everyone who is delighted is tranquilized, and he who is tranquilized is changed. Wherefore there is a syllogism through different media, and not from the same class, yet not so that neither is predicated of neither medium, since it is necessary that both should be present with something which is the same. We must also consider in how many ways there may be a syllogism of the same thing through the other figures. Chapter 30. That there is no science of the fortuitous. There is no science through demonstration of that which is fortuitous, since the fortuitous is neither as necessary nor as for the most part, but that which is produced besides these, and demonstration is one of these. For every syllogism is through premises either necessary, or through those which are for the most part true, and if indeed the propositions are necessary, the conclusion also is necessary, but if for the most part true, the conclusion also is of the same character. Hence if the fortuitous is neither as for the most part, nor necessary, there cannot be demonstration of it. Chapter 31. That we do not possess scientific knowledge through sensation. Neither is it possible to have scientific knowledge through sensation, for although there is sensible perception of such a thing as this, and not of this particular thing, yet it is necessary to have a sensible perception of this particular thing, and somewhere and now. But it is impossible sensibly to perceive the universal, and in all things, for it is not this particular thing, nor now, otherwise it would not be universal, since we call the universal that which is always and everywhere. Since then demonstrations are universal, but these cannot be perceived by sense, it is plain that neither can scientific be possessed through sense. In fact, it is clear that even if we could perceive by sense that a triangle has angles equal to 2 right, we should require demonstration, and not, as some say, know this scientifically, for it is necessary sensibly to perceive the singular, but science is from the knowledge of the universal. Wherefore also, if we were above the moon, and saw the earth opposite, we should not know the cause of an eclipse of the moon, for we should perceive that it is eclipsed, but in short should not perceive why, since there would not be a sensible perception of the universal. Nevertheless, from observing this frequently to happen, by investigation of the universal, we should obtain demonstration, for the universal is manifest from many singulars, but is valuable because it discloses the cause, wherefore the universal knowledge about such things, of which there is another cause, is more honourable than the senses and apprehension. About first principles, however, there is another reason. It is clearly then impossible to possess scientific knowledge of anything demonstrable by sensible perception, unless some one should affirm that sensible perception is this, to possess science through demonstration. There are indeed certain problems which are referred to the deficiency of our sensible perception, for some, if we should see them, we should not investigate, not as knowing from seeing, but as possessing the universal from seeing. For instance, if we saw glass perforated, and the light passed through it, it would be also manifest why it illuminates in consequence of our seeing separately in each, and at the same time perceiving that it is thus withal. Chapter 32. On the difference of principles according to the diversity of syllogisms. That there should be the same principles of all syllogisms is impossible. First, this will be seen by those who consider logically, for some syllogisms are true, others false, since it is possible to conclude the true from the false, yet this but rarely happens. For instance, if A is truly predicated of C, but the middle B is false, for neither is A present with B, nor B with C. Example 1. Every stone is an animal. Every man is a stone. Therefore, every man is an animal. If, however, the media of these propositions are assumed, they will be false, because every false conclusion is from false principles, but the true from true principles, and the false and the true are different. Next, neither are the false deduced from the same principles with themselves, for they are false and contrary to each other, and cannot be simultaneous. For instance, it is impossible that justice should be injustice or timidity, that man should be a horse or an ox, or that the equal should be greater or less. From these positions indeed we may prove it thus, since neither are there the same principles of all the true conclusions, for the principles of many are different in genus, and are not suitable, as units do not suit points, for the former have not position, but the latter have it. At least it is necessary to adapt either to media, or from above or below, or to have some terms within, but others without. Nor can there possibly be certain common principles from which all things may be demonstrated. I mean by common, as to affirm or to deny everything, for the genera of beings are different, and some are present with quantities, but others with qualities alone, with which there is demonstration through the common. Again, principles are not much fewer than conclusions, for the propositions are principles, but the propositions subsist when a term is either assumed or introduced. Moreover, conclusions are infinite, but terms finite. Besides, some principles are from necessity, but others contingent. To those therefore who thus consider, it will be impossible that there should be the same finite principles when the conclusions are infinite. But if any one should reason in some other way, for instance, that these are the principles of geometry, but these of reckoning, and these of medicine, what is this statement other than that there are principles of the sciences? But to say that there are the same principles because they are the same with themselves is ridiculous, for thus all things become the same. Still, neither is to demonstrate anything from all things to investigate whether there are the same principles of all, since this would be very silly. For neither does this happen in evident disciplines, nor is it possible in analysis, since immediate propositions are principles. And another conclusion arises when an immediate proposition is assumed. If, however, any one should say that the first immediate propositions are the same principles, there is one in each genus. But if it is neither possible that anything can be demonstrated as it ought to be from all principles, nor that they should be so different, as that there should be different ones of each science, it remains that the principles of all are the same in genus, but that from different principles different sciences are demonstrated. Now this is evidently impossible, for it has been shown that the principles are different in genus of those things which are generically different. For principles are twofold, viz., from which, and about which. Those indeed, from which, are common, but those, about which, are peculiar, for instance, number and magnitude. Chapter 33. Upon the difference between science and opinion. The object of scientific knowledge and science itself differs from the object of opinion, and from opinion, because science is universal, and subsists through things necessary, and what is necessary cannot subsist otherwise than it does. Some things, however, are true, and subsist, yet may possibly subsist otherwise. It is evident then that science is not conversant with these, for else things which are capable of subsisting otherwise could not possibly subsist otherwise. Yet neither is intellect conversant with such, for I call intellect the principle of science, nor in demonstrable science, and this is the notion of an immediate proposition. But intellect, science, and opinion, and what is asserted through these, are true, wherefore it remains that opinion is conversant with the true or false, which yet may have a various subsistence, but this is the notion of an immediate and not necessary proposition. This also agrees with what appears for both opinion is unstable, and its nature is of this kind. Besides, no one thinks that he opines, but that he knows, when he thinks it impossible for a thing to subsist otherwise than it does. But when he thinks that it is indeed thus, yet that nothing hinders it being otherwise, then he thinks that he opines, opinion as it were being conversant with a thing of this kind, but science with what is necessary. How then is it possible to opine and know the same thing, and why will opinion not be science, if a person admits that everything which he knows he may opine? For both he who knows and he who opines will follow through media till they come to things immediate, so that if the former knows, he also who opines knows. For as it is possible to opine that a thing is, so likewise why it is, and this is the medium. Or if he so conceives things which cannot subsist otherwise, as if he had the definitions through which the demonstrations are framed, he will not opine, but know. But if that they are true, yet that these are not present with them essentially, and according to form, he will opine and not know truly both the that and the why, if indeed he should opine through things immediate. But if not through the immediate, he will only opine that they are. Still opinion and science are not altogether conversant with the same thing, but as both the true and the false opinion are in a manner about the same thing, thus also science and opinion are conversant with the same. For as some say that true and false opinion are of the same, absurd consequences follow both in other respects, and also that he who opines falsely does not opine. Now, since the same thing is stated in several ways, in one way there may be, and in another there cannot be, a true and false opinion of the same. For to opine truly that the diameter of a square is commensurate with its side is absurd, but because the diameter about which there are contrary opinions is the same thing, thus also they are of the same thing, but the essence of each according to the definition is not the same. In like manner also, knowledge and opinion are conversant with the same thing, for the former is so conversant with animal as that it is impossible animal should not exist, but the latter so as that it may possibly not exist, as if the one should be conversant with that which is man essentially, but the other with man indeed, yet not with what is man essentially, for it is the same thing, that is, man, but not the same as to the manner. From these then it is clearly impossible to opine and know the same thing at the same time, for otherwise at one and the same time a man might have a notion that the same thing could, and could not subsist otherwise, which is impossible. In different men indeed, each of these may be possible about the same thing, as we have said, but in the same man it is impossible even thus, since he would have a notion at the same time, for instance, that man is essentially animal, for this it is to be impossible not to be an animal, and is not essentially an animal, for this it is to be possible not to be an animal. For the rest, how it is necessary to distinguish between discourse and intellect, and science and art, and prudence and wisdom, belongs rather partly to the physical, and partly to the ethical theory. Chapter 34. Of Sagacity. Sagacity is a certain happy extempore conjecture of the middle term, as if a man perceiving that the moon always has that part lustrous which is towards the sun, should straightway understand why this occurs, viz. Because it is illuminated by the sun, or seeing a man talking to a rich person, should know that it is in order to borrow money of him, or that persons are friends, because they are enemies of the same man, for he who perceives the extremes knows all the middle causes. Let to be lustrous in the part towards the sun be A, to be illuminated by the sun B, the moon C. Wherefore B, to be illuminated by the sun is present with the moon C, but A, to be lustrous in the part turned towards that by which it is illuminated is present with B. Hence also A is present with C through B. Example 1. Whatever is illuminated by the sun shines in the part towards the sun. The moon is illuminated by the sun. Therefore, the moon shines in the part towards the sun. End of chapter 34 and end of book 1. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards. Chapter 1 of book 2 of Posterior Analytics. Chapter 1. That the subjects of scientific investigation are 4. The subjects of investigation are equal in number to the things which we scientifically know. But we investigate 4 things: that a thing is, why it is, if it is, what it is. For when we inquire whether it is this or that, having reference to a number, as whether the sun is eclipsed or not, we investigate the that. And a sign of this is that when we have found that it is eclipsed, we desist from our inquiries. And if we knew from the first that it is eclipsed, we do not inquire whether it is so. But when we know the that, we investigate the why. For instance, when we know that there is an eclipse and there is an earthquake, we inquire why there is an eclipse and an earthquake. These things indeed we investigate thus, but some after another manner. For instance, if there is or is not a centaur or a god. I say if there is or is not simply, and not if it is white or not. When, however, we know that a thing is, we inquire what it is, for instance, what God or what man is. Chapter 2. That all investigation has reference to the discovery of the middle term. The things then which we investigate, and which having discovered we know, are such and so many. But when we inquire the that, or if a thing is simply, then we inquire whether there is a medium of it or not. But when knowing either that it is, or if it is, either in part or simply, we again investigate why it is, or what it is. Then we inquire what the middle is. But I mean by the that, if it is in a part and simply, in a part indeed, as is the moon eclipsed or increased. For in such things we inquire if a thing is or is not, but simply as if there is a moon or not, or if night is or not. In all these inquiries it occurs that we investigate either if there is a middle, or what the middle is, for the cause is the middle, and this is investigated in all things. Is there then an eclipse? Is there a certain cause or not? After this, when we know that there is, we inquire what this is. For the cause of a thing, not being this or that, but simply substance, or not simply, but something of those which subsist per se, or accidentally, is the middle. I mean by what is simply substance, the subject, as the moon, or the earth, or the sun, or a triangle. but by a certain thing, as an eclipse, equality, inequality, if it is in the middle or not. For in all these it is evident that what a thing is, and why it is, are the same. What is an eclipse? A privation of light from the moon through the interposition of the earth. Why is there an eclipse? Or why is the moon eclipsed? Because its light falls through the interposition of the earth. What is symphony? A ratio of numbers in sharp and flat. Why does the sharp accord with the flat? Because the sharp and flat have the ratio of numbers. Do then the sharp and flat accord? Is there then a ratio of them in numbers? Assuming that there is, what then is the ratio? That the inquiry is of the middle, those things prove, whose middle falls within the cognizance of the senses, since we inquire when we have not a sensible perception, as of an eclipse, whether it is or not. But if we were above the moon, we should not inquire neither if nor why, but it would be immediately evident, as from sensible perception we should also obtain knowledge of the universal, for sense would show us that the earth is now opposed, for it would be evident that there is now an eclipse, and from this there would arise the universal. As therefore we say, the knowledge of the what is the same as the knowledge of the why, and this is either simply, and not somewhat of things inherent, for it is of things inherent, as that there are two right angles, or that it is greater or less. Chapter 3. Upon the difference between demonstration and definition. That all investigations then are an inquiry of the middle is evident, but let us show how what a thing is demonstrated, and what is the method of training up a thing to its principles, also what a definition is, and of what subjects doubting first about these. But let the commencement of the future doubts be that which is most appropriate to the following discussion, since perhaps a man might doubt whether it is possible to know the same thing, and according to the same by definition, and demonstration, or whether it is impossible. For definition seems to be of what a thing is, but everything which signifies what a thing is universal and affirmative. But some syllogisms are negative, others not universal. For instance, all those in the second figure are negative, but those in the third not universal. Next, neither is there definition of all affirmatives in the first figure, as that every triangle has angles equal to two right angles. The reason of this is, because to know scientifically that which is demonstrable is to possess demonstration, so that if there is demonstration in regard to things of this kind, there can evidently not be also definition of them. For a person might know by definition, without demonstration, since nothing prevents the possession of it at one and the same time. A sufficient evidence of this is also derived from induction, for we have never known by definition any of those which are inherent per se, nor which are accidents. Besides, if definition be a certain indication of substance, it is evident that such things are not substances. Clearly then, there is not definition of everything of which there is also demonstration, but what? Is there then demonstration of everything of which there is definition or not? There is one reason, and the same also of this. For of one thing, so far as it is one, there is one science, so that if to know that which is demonstrable be to possess demonstration, an impossibility would happen, for he who possesses definition would know scientifically without demonstration. Besides, the principles of demonstration are definitions, of which it has been shown before, there will not be demonstrations, since either principles will be demonstrable, and principles of principles, and this would proceed to infinity, or the first principles will be indemonstrable definitions. Yet if there are not of everything and the same, may there not be definition and demonstration of a certain thing and the same? Or is it impossible, since there is not demonstration of what there is definition? For definition is of what a thing is, and of substance, but all demonstrations appear to suppose and assume what a thing is, as mathematics, what is unity, and what an odd number, and the rest in like manner. Moreover, every demonstration shows something of somewhat, as that it is, or that it is not. But in definition, one thing is not predicated of another, as neither animal of biped, nor this of animal, nor figure of superficies. For superficies is not figure, nor figure superficies. Again, it is one thing to show what a thing is, but another to show that it is. Definition then shows what a thing is, but demonstration that this thing either is or is not of this. Of a different thing indeed, there is a different demonstration, unless it should be as a certain part of the whole. I say this because the isosceles has been shown to have angles equal to 2 right, if every triangle has been shown to have them, for that is a part, but this a whole. These, however, that a thing is, and what it is, do not thus subsist in reference to each other, since the one is not a part of the other. Evidently then, there is neither entirely demonstration of what there is definition, nor entirely definition of what there is demonstration. Hence, in short, it is impossible to have both of the same thing, so that it is also evident that definition and demonstration will neither be the same, nor the one contained in the other, otherwise their subjects would subsist similarly. Chapter 4. That the definition of a thing cannot be demonstrated. Let then, so far these things be matters of doubt. But as to what a thing is, whether is there, or is there not, a syllogism and a demonstration of it, as the present discussion supposed. For a syllogism shows something in respect of somewhat through a medium, but the definition what a thing is both peculiar and is predicated in respect of what it is. Now it is necessary that these should reciprocate, for if A is the property of C, it is evidently also that of B, and that of C, so that all reciprocate with each other. Nevertheless, if A is present with every B in respect of what it is, and universally B is predicated of every C in respect of what it is also necessary that A should be predicated of C in the question what it is. Still, if some one should assume without this reduplication, it will not be necessary that A should be predicated of C in the question what a thing is, though A should be predicated of B in the same question, but not of those of which B is predicated in this question. Now both these will signify what a thing C is, wherefore B will also be the definition of C. Hence if both signify what a thing is, and what the very nature of it is, there will be the very nature of a thing prior in the middle term. Universally also, if it is possible to show what man is, let C be man, but A what he is, whether biped animal or anything else. In order then that a conclusion should be drawn, A must necessarily be predicated of every B, and of this there will be another middle definition, so that this also will be a definition of a man, wherefore a person assumes what he ought to show, for B also is the definition of a man. We must however consider it in two propositions, and in first and immediate principles, for what is stated becomes thus especially evident. They therefore who show what the soul is, or what man or anything else is, by conversion, beg the question, as if a man should assume the soul to be that which is the cause to itself of life, and that this is number moving itself. He must necessarily so assume as a postulate that the soul is number moving itself, as that it is the same thing, for it does not follow if A is consequent to B, and this to C, that A will therefore be the definition of the essence of C, but it will be only possible to say that this is true, nor if A is that which is predicated essentially of every B, for the very nature of animal is predicated of the very nature of man, since it is true that whatever exists as man exists as animal, just as every man is animal. Yet not so, as for both to be one thing. If then a person does not assume this, he will not conclude that A is the very nature and substance of C, but if he thus assume it, he will assume prior to the conclusion that B is the definition of the essence of C. Therefore there has been no demonstration, for he has made a petitio principii. Chapter 5. That there is no conclusion by divisions, proved. Nevertheless, neither does the method through divisions infer a conclusion, as we observed in the analysis about figures, since it is never necessary that when these things exist, that should exist, as neither does he demonstrate who forms an induction, for the conclusion ought not to inquire, nor to exist from being granted, but it necessarily is, when they exist, although the respondent does not acknowledge it. Is man, for instance, animal or inanimate? If he has assumed him to be an animal, it has not been syllogistically concluded. Again, every animal is either pedestrian or aquatic. He assumes it pedestrian, and that man is that whole animal pedestrian is not necessary from what is said, but he assumes also this. It signifies nothing, however, whether he does this in respect of many things or few, since it is the same thing to those therefore who thus proceed, and in what is capable of syllogistic conclusion, this use is unsyllogistic, for what prevents the whole of this being true of man, yet without enunciating what a thing is, or the very nature of it? Again, what prevents something being added to, or taken away from, or exceeding the essence? Negligence then happens about these things, but we may avoid it by assuming all things as granted in respect of what a thing is, and the first being made a postulate by arranging the order in division, omitting nothing. This however is requisite, for it is necessary that there should be an individual, yet nevertheless there is not a syllogism, but if so, it indicates after another manner, and this is not at all absurd, since neither perhaps does he who makes an induction demonstrate, though at the same time he renders something manifest, but he who selects definition from division does not state a syllogism. For as in conclusions without media, if a man state that from such things being granted, this particular thing necessarily exists, it is possible to inquire why, thus also is it in definitions by division. What is man? A mortal animal, pedestrian, biped, without wings. Why? According to each edition, for he will state and show by division as he thinks that every one is either mortal or immortal. The whole, however, of such a sentence is not definition, wherefore, though it should be demonstrated by division, yet the definition does not become a syllogism. Chapter 6. Case of one proposition defining the definition itself. Is it, however, possible to demonstrate what a thing is according to substance, but from hypothesis assuming that the very nature of a thing in the question what it is something of its peculiar principles, and that these alone indicate its substance, and that the whole is its peculiarity? For this is its essence. Or again, has a person assumed the very nature of a thing in this also? For we must necessarily demonstrate through a middle term. Moreover, as in a syllogism, we do not assume what is to have been syllogistically concluded, for the proposition is either a whole or a part, from which the syllogism consists. Thus, neither ought the very nature of a thing to be in a syllogism, but this should be separate from the things which are laid down, and in reply to him who questions whether this has been syllogistically concluded or not, we must answer that it is, for this was the syllogism, and to him who asserts that the very nature of the thing was not concluded, we must reply that it was, for the very nature of the thing was laid down by us, so that it is necessary that without the definition of syllogism, or of the definition itself, something should be syllogistically inferred. Also, if a person should demonstrate from hypothesis, for instance, if to be divisible is the essence of evil, but of a contrary the essence is contrary of as many things as possess a contrary, but good is contrary to evil, and the indivisible to the divisible, then the essence of good is to be indivisible, for here he proves assuming the very nature of a thing, and he assumes it in order to demonstrate what is its very nature. Let however something be different, since in demonstrations it is assumed that this is predicated of that, yet not that very thing, nor that of which there is the same definition, and which reciprocates. To both, however, there is the same doubt against him who demonstrates by division, and against the syllogism thus formed. Why man will be an animal, biped, pedestrian, but not an animal and pedestrian? For from the things assumed, there is no necessity that there should be one predicate, but just as the same man may be both a musician and a grammarian. End of chapter 6 of book 2. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.